They sat me by the kitchen. That's where I watched my only son get married, through a swinging door behind a tray of shrimp cocktail. I had paid for the entire wedding. Every single flower, every chair, every table setting. But when the music started and the toast began, I wasn't part of it. Not even close. I smiled politely, stayed silent, and when the last bite of cake was eaten, I burned it all down with one phone call. If this story finds you, subscribe and tell me, where in the world are you watching from? There was no sign waiting for me. No card, no nameplate, no warm greeting. Just a folding chair, tucked behind a stack of used trays, and a battered wheeled cart whose broken wheel squeaked miserably every time someone pushed it. I stood there for a few seconds, blinking hard under the harsh kitchen lights. The heavy scent of marinara sauce clung to the air, thick, sour, mixing with the steam that poured from the kitchen doors. I could feel the oven's heat radiating against my back, and deep inside me, something twisted sharply. I looked down at my dress, soft mauve chiffon, hand-stitched. I had spent 3 painstaking hours getting my hair done that morning. 3 hours pretending that today would be just as special for me as it was for them. No one had told me. No one had said, "We've made other seating arrangements." No one had even looked at me when I arrived. Not even Daniel. He was too busy smiling that brilliant smile of his, adjusting his cufflinks, letting her mother kiss him on the cheek, like she had raised him. Like she was the one who sat by his bedside during night terrors, who stayed up until dawn whispering, "You're safe, you're safe." Like she was the one who took double shifts to pay for his braces when rent and dental bills collided and something had to give. I clutched my little beige leather handbag, the one Daniel had given me years ago for Mother's Day, back when he still called me Mama. My hands were trembling, a subtle vibration running through my wrists, an almost electric energy trying to escape through my fingertips. A catering manager, barely older than a boy, approached awkwardly. They said you were supposed to wait back here, ma'am," he muttered. The bride didn't want, any visual clashes with the theme. I stared at him. Theme? He winced, glancing nervously toward the swinging doors. The silver edge banged sharply against the wall again. From the reception hall, laughter and music spilled out in waves. For, aesthetic consistency. With the photos. And all. I sat down slowly. The chair creaked under my weight. There was a dark stain beneath my feet. Gravy, maybe, and my shoes stuck slightly when I shifted them. I looked down at my hands, my nails freshly painted a soft pink, and then at the cold chicken breast they had unceremoniously dropped on a chipped white plate in front of me. The worst part? I didn't say a word. Not one. Because it was his day. Because I told myself, don't ruin this for him. Don't be that mother. Because I had paid for it all and still foolishly believed that meant something. I pulled out the program I had been handed at the church, elegant cursive on creamy cardstock. No mention of me, anywhere. Her father had walked her down the aisle. Her mother gave the first speech. I was just the purse string, the afterthought, the invisible woman in the kitchen. The door swung open again, and for a fleeting second, I caught a glimpse of the chandelier, the soft golden light bathing the dance floor where Daniel and Emily twirled together for their first dance. He didn't look my way. Not once. I pressed my paper napkin to my mouth, pretending to dab away a non-existent stain. My eyes burned fiercely. I told myself it was the onions from the kitchen, the heat, the steam, not the betrayal. But it was. Oh God, it was. And somewhere deep inside me, something cracked, quietly, sharply, like a hairline fracture in glass. The kind you don't notice until one day the whole thing shatters in your hands. Pain shattered through me like broken glass. I sat frozen, staring at the wall ahead, where a patch of peeling paint curled away behind a forgotten fire extinguisher. I focused on that small, ugly spot so intently that I half believed I could burn a hole through it. That patch became my anchor, the only thing keeping me from falling apart in front of a passing waiter balancing a tray of crab puffs. Because if I let it happen, if I let the tears come, I knew I might never stop. I took a breath, then another. The chicken on my plate had long gone cold, untouched. At some point, someone brought out dessert, layers of pristine white and glinting gold. Her colors, her vision, the perfect little fantasy she had curated so carefully. I didn't taste it. I didn't even move. I just stared at it, numb, until I made the call. It was quick, precise. I didn't explain, there was no need. Just 3 calm cancellations. The flowers for tomorrow's brunch, the second half of the band's payment, and the open bar that was supposed to flow until midnight. My voice was steady, unnervingly calm, and when I ended the call, I felt no guilt, no regret. Instead, a small flicker of something long buried stirred inside me, something I hadn't felt in years, power. I looked down at my hands again. They were no longer trembling. My heart, once hammering wildly, now beat in a low, steady hum, like an engine sparking quietly back to life. The kitchen door swung open again. Another flash of light. Another burst of laughter from the reception hall. Another reminder of the life they were celebrating without me. Let them toast without me. I had my own plans now. I didn't sleep that night. Not for a second. I lay stiffly in the sterile hotel bed, still dressed in that mauve chiffon gown, staring at the ceiling fan whirling above me like it might, at any moment, come loose and crash down onto my chest. Part of me almost hoped it would. I could still smell the kitchen grease tangled in my hair, the fading perfume of expensive roses clinging stubbornly to my skin, now mixed with the sour tang of sweat and humiliation. It wrapped around me like a second, heavier skin. At some point, I kicked off my shoes. My feet, swollen and sore, had been aching throughout the entire reception, but I hadn't dared remove them. Even banished to the kitchen, even abandoned, I needed to look presentable. The red digits of the hotel clock glowed in the dark, 3:17 a.m. My phone buzzed again on the nightstand. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. I already knew. Missed calls from Daniel, from Emily, a frantic message from my niece. What happened? Everyone's freaking out. Instead, I opened the wedding budget spreadsheet on my tablet, the document I had maintained meticulously for over a year. I had recorded every cent, every adjustment, every indulgent upgrade Emily had requested. Always with that tight, rehearsed smile. Always with that word, she wielded like a velvet knife, elevated. Margaret, we just want something a little more elevated. That's how I agreed to hand-calligraphed invitations from a boutique Etsy vendor in Vermont. That's how the venue moved from the humble community church hall to a rustic chic, restored barn with chandeliers and whiskey barrels. That's how the bar menu evolved to feature custom cocktails. How the cake grew from 2 modest tiers to a towering 5-layer spectacle. I paid for all of it. No one offered to split the costs. Not Daniel, not her parents, and I never asked. Because I wanted my son to have everything I could never afford when I was raising him alone. As I scrolled through the transactions, my breath caught. 2 unauthorized charges popped up, expenses from just days before the wedding. A hefty bar tab from a tasting event. An upgrade to the dress rehearsal dinner. The very same restaurant where they tucked me in the back, near the kitchen. My stomach clenched. I double-checked the card details. It was mine. Used without permission. And then I saw the Venmo note she'd sent to one of her bridesmaids. His mom is covering everything. Might as well go big. Wedding vibes. I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, I felt nothing. That's strange. Hollow nothingness that comes after too much hurt, when your nerve endings curl inward to protect whatever is left. I reached out and turned on the lamp. The sudden light stabbed my eyes. I crossed to the mirror above the dresser. My reflection startled me. Mascara smeared beneath my eyes, the soft curves of my mouth hardened into something grim and unfamiliar. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't broken. Not anymore. Something unfamiliar stared back at me. My hair was flattened on one side, crushed from the pillow. I looked like someone who had aged 10 years in a single night. But then something shifted. I ran a hand through my hair, smoothing it back into place. I washed my face under cold, stinging water. I sat down at the small hotel desk, opened my email, and began to type. I drafted 3 messages, each one short, polite, and final. The first to the florist. Please cancel the Sunday delivery. Payment balance will be withheld. Thank you. The second, to the band. Due to changes in the event schedule, we will not require the second performance. Please consider the matter closed. And the third, to the bar vendor. We are scaling back post-reception services. Please cancel the second shift and do not process the remaining balance. Each email was calm, professional, and absolute. It was nearly dawn when I pressed send. As the sky outside faded from black to a deep, bruised blue, I closed my tablet, sat back on the bed, and listened to the steady hum of the air conditioning. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. I wasn't angry. Not yet. But I was done. Done being convenient. Done being the wallet. Done being the afterthought tucked away behind swinging kitchen doors. Let them figure it out. Let them scramble when the music suddenly stopped, when the bar closed early, when the flowers never arrived. Maybe, just maybe, they would remember who made that wedding possible in the first place. The woman they didn't want in the photos. The woman they banished to the kitchen. I could still hear the music, pulsing faintly through the walls like a distant heartbeat. I sat there in that folding chair, a plate of cold hors d'oeuvres balanced on my lap, a warm Diet Coke from the catering cooler beside me, trying and failing not to listen. Every laugh, every cheer, every clinking glass made its way back through that swinging door, each sound a cruel little reminder of where I wasn't welcome. I heard someone making a toast, a man's voice, deep and confident, probably her father, maybe Daniel's best man. I leaned back slightly, just enough to catch a glimpse through the crack in the door. There they were, framed in front of the ridiculous floral arch I had paid Dylan to build. Gold chairs, floating candles, a custom neon sign overhead, looping in cursive, "The future is forever." I recognized the voices, even without seeing the faces. Susan, Emily's mother, with her syrupy, fake sympathy voice. "Oh my God, Daniel, you are just the sweetest man alive. Emily is so lucky." Then came the laughter, the cheers. I froze, heart pounding. There, at the head table, sat Susan, draped in navy chiffon, dripping in pearls, pretending she was born into old money. She wasn't. She had met me 3 times before the wedding. Never once asked about my life. Never once thanked me for the payments. Never once offered a single penny to help. Next to her sat Emily's father, holding court like some suburban king, his booming laugh filling the room. The same man who had told me at the rehearsal dinner, "We really admire your perseverance, raising Daniel on your own. Must have been hard. Perseverance. As if I had climbed a mountain, not worked endless shifts in scrubs, so my son could have a life without second-hand clothes." And there was Daniel, my Daniel, smiling like a stranger, sitting between her parents as if he had always belonged to them. I searched for my family, for any sign of them. My sister Carol sat 2 rows back, next to our cousin Diane. Neither of them glanced toward the kitchen. No one did. I wasn't part of the show. I was a problem to be solved with a folding chair and a door that swung shut. Someone brushed past me, a young catering waitress, probably a college student. She glanced at my plate, then gave me a small, awkward smile. "Do you want, a refill or anything?" she asked hesitantly. I shook my head. "I'm fine," I lied. But I wasn't. God, I wasn't. Every inch of me ached, feet, shoulders, jaw clenched so tightly it pulsed behind my eyes. My heart sat in my chest like a rotting lump, heavy and unmoving. I looked down at my plate. 3 lonely olives, a sad sliver of brie, a single wilted triangle of toast. I hadn't eaten since breakfast, but I couldn't bring myself to put anything in my mouth. My stomach was a clenched fist, my throat a narrow pipe. And as I sat there, isolated and invisible, I thought of the years, the sacrifices that led me to that very moment. The seating chart. Weeks ago, I had asked Emily, gently, almost timidly, "Have you figured out where I'll be sitting?" She flashed me a bright, tight smile. "We're still finalizing everything. Don't worry, Margaret. You'll be included." I should have known better. No, deep down, I did know. I was being managed, shifted around like a prop, invited for the sake of appearances, tolerated for the checkbook, but never truly wanted. The worst part? I let it happen. I agreed to every small cut, every tiny concession, one after another. No speech from me. No mother-son dance, because they said it might feel awkward. No photos before the ceremony. No mention in the program. Just a chair in the kitchen. I heard Daniel's laughter again. That deep, rumbling laugh he used to have as a boy when I'd chase him barefoot through the sprinkler on warm summer days. A sound that once had belonged to us and now rang out for strangers. A sound I hadn't heard directed at me in years. Something stirred in my chest. Not grief. Not sorrow. Rage. Quiet, controlled, devastating rage. I stood up. I walked to the swinging kitchen door, placed my hand on the edge, and pushed just enough to slip a glimpse through. I caught Emily's eyes immediately. She saw me. She knew exactly where I was, exactly what she had done, and she smiled. Not apologetically, not nervously, calmly, confidently, as if I were precisely where I was meant to be, out of sight, out of mind. She turned back to her bridesmaids, tossing her head and laughing. A light, easy laugh like a girl who had gotten everything she wanted. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a forgotten detail. It was deliberate. She didn't want me there. And Daniel had let her. They both had. Something inside me shifted, not shattered, not broken, but repositioned. The role I had once held in their lives had changed forever, and I was done pretending not to notice. Let them have their day. Let them bask in their borrowed spotlight. They thought I was invisible. They had no idea how much I could take away. The toast began while I still stood quietly by the kitchen door. Someone had dimmed the reception hall lights. Above the tables, the glow of string lights shimmered like stars. Golden chargers gleamed at every setting. The microphone squealed once, then her father's voice boomed out, slick and polished like a game show host. To our daughter, Emily, and her perfect new husband, Daniel. Cheers exploded through the room. I took a step back. Behind me, the kitchen was alive with chaos. Clanging trays, snapping voices, servers arguing over gluten-free plates for table 12. I leaned against the wall. The plaster was cool against my back. The air reeked of garlic, hot oil, and resentment. On the other side of the door, her father's voice swelled again. When Emily was little, she dreamed of a fairy tale, a prince, a castle, a happily ever after. Well, sweetheart, today you got it. More applause. My breath caught. Where was he when Daniel was little? He never saw me cleaning vomit off bathroom tiles at 3 a.m., never saw me hand-stitching missing buttons on Daniel's school uniform, never drove through sleet to get him to a chess tournament. But now they were rewriting the story, and I had been edited out completely. I looked down at my hands. They were blotchy and trembling slightly. The cold draft from the overhead vent made my skin prickle. Then it was Emily's mother's turn. Her voice oozed through the speakers, syrupy, rehearsed. We are so grateful to be surrounded today by so many people who love Emily and Daniel, and to welcome Daniel into our family. He's like a second son to us already. Another round of cheers. Like a second son. But not a word about me. Not one word for the woman who raised him alone. No, thank you for everything, Margaret. No, this day wouldn't have been possible without her. No acknowledgement. Nothing. I bit the inside of my cheek, so hard I tasted blood. My feet ached, but I refused to sit. I refused to give them the satisfaction. And then, the part one had been dreading most. The groom's speech. Daniel stepped up to the microphone. He looked radiant, confident, dressed in a tailored suit I had helped pay for. I had once watched him take his first breath in a NICU unit. So tiny, so fragile. Now he stood before me, grown, glowing, a stranger. I just want to thank everyone for being here, he began, his voice steady, sure. His voice was deeper than I remembered, polished smooth, like he had practiced it in front of a mirror. I feel so lucky, Daniel said, his arm linked with Emily's. Emily, you've made me the happiest man alive. And to your family, thank you for welcoming me like your own. I truly feel at home with you all. My throat tightened. He continued, his voice strong and proud. And to everyone who helped make today happen, thank you. This has been the most incredible day of our lives. My name was never said. Not once. I had paid for the venue, paid for the catering, the photographer, the DJ, the linens, the flowers, the custom neon sign glowing behind them. I even paid for the very dress Emily was wearing, standing there with her hand wrapped so sweetly around his arm. And yet, I didn't exist. The servers clapped politely. The band struck up again. The dance floor began to fill with glittering bodies, swirling dresses, loosened ties. Someone, with a sheepish smile, brought me a slice of cake on a flimsy plastic plate. Vanilla with raspberry filling. Her favorite. I didn't like raspberry. Never had. I stared at the thin gold fork resting beside the cake. My hand was steady now, perfectly calm. I remembered a different cake. Chocolate with sprinkles when Daniel turned 10. He had pointed it out in a bakery window with wide, hopeful eyes. I had worked 2 extra shifts just to afford it. When I surprised him with it, he hugged me so hard I thought my ribs might crack. That boy was gone. In his place stood a man who hadn't even remembered to save me a chair. I set the cake aside, untouched, and I waited. Waited until the last fork scraped across a plate, until guests were rising, laughing, wiping icing from their lips, the music swelling to its joyful crescendo. Then I moved. I walked straight out of the kitchen, past the servers, past the humming bar, out the side door into the night. The air was cool and still, the kind of silence that rings in your ears. I took out my phone. 3 calls, quick, precise. 1 to the florist, 1 to the band, 1 to the bar manager. Polite, direct, no explanations needed. By the time I re-entered the hotel, the wheels were already in motion. Tomorrow's brunch? Cancelled. The late-night band set? Pulled. The second bartender and custom cocktail menu? Gone. I had stayed silent long enough. Let them enjoy the scraps of what was left. Let them wonder about the missing pieces, the sudden voids. I didn't care if they called me dramatic, petty, ungrateful. They had already erased me from the story. All I had done was turn the page. The hotel room smelled faintly of rose lotion and something sharp and metallic, stress, maybe, or the tang of my own skin. I sat cross-legged on the bed, the crisp comforter still perfectly made beneath me, untouched since I had checked in 2 nights ago. I hadn't cried. Not once. But something inside me had turned cold. Not frozen. Frozen things crack and shatter. No, I was hardening. Tempered. The sun hadn't even risen yet when I reached for my purse. I pulled out my phone. 6 missed calls. 2 voicemails. Over a dozen text messages. Daniel, where are you? Emily. Why is the brunch canceled? Daniel again. Mom, seriously, this isn't funny. Emily. I don't understand what's happening. Are you okay? Another message. This is so childish. I laughed softly, just a small puff of air through my nose. Childish. Of course. I opened my banking app. My fingers moved automatically. The muscle memory of someone who had balanced a checkbook every Sunday night for 30 years. The charges were still there, unauthorized, arrogant. The bride, my new daughter-in-law, had helped herself to my card for a pre-wedding bar crawl, and a full spa day for her bridal party. It was all right there in black and white. Bottles of champagne, manicures, facial treatments, brunch for 8. No one asked. No one even told me. The trust one had carried like a familiar quilt, warm and worn, now felt shredded, like someone had slashed it to ribbons while I slept. I clicked over to my email. 2 new messages blinked at me. One from the florist. We're disappointed by the sudden cancellation, but per our agreement, no refunds for less than 48 hours notice. Fine. The second, from the band's manager. We were halfway through setup when the cancellation came. It's unusual, but your message was clear. We'll leave the deposit untouched. Also fine. I hadn't done this for a refund. I hadn't done this for revenge. This was for me. For the woman they tried to erase. For the invisible mother hidden behind a swinging kitchen door. My stomach growled, a low, hollow sound. I hadn't eaten all day. I thought about the untouched cake. But I wasn't hungry. I was awake. And I was finally truly done. I hadn't eaten since the day before. The very thought of food made me nauseous. Instead, I got up, pulled open the stiff hotel curtains, and stood quietly as the sun began bleeding into the sky. Orange first, then pink, then a washed-out yellow that made everything outside look unreal, like a dream you wake from just before it ends. And then I remembered. A little red file folder, tucked away in the bottom drawer of my dresser at home. Old paperwork, legal documents, letters I could never bring myself to throw away. I felt drawn to it, as if it had been whispering my name across the miles this entire time. Slowly, deliberately, I packed my things. I showered, scrubbing away the perfume, the kitchen grease, and the bitter film of resentment. I dried my hair, pulled on jeans and a button-down shirt that still smelled faintly of lavender detergent, then checked out of the hotel without a word. The drive home was quiet. Just the steady hum of tires on asphalt and the soft static of a radio, playing songs I didn't recognize. The kind of drive where your own thoughts rise up, loud and unfiltered, no longer kept at bay. He didn't even mention you. They all saw where you were sitting, and not a single one of them did anything. When I pulled into the driveway, the roses I had planted 2 summers ago were in full bloom, splashes of crimson against the green. I didn't stop to admire them. I went straight inside, straight to the bedroom. I pulled open the dresser drawer and found the red folder, right where I'd left it. I sat on the edge of the bed and sifted through the stack. Old insurance forms, faded photos, forgotten receipts, until I found it. A letter. The envelope yellowed at the corners, postmarked from Arizona. The date written in my late husband's familiar hand, the year he left us. I remembered finding it weeks after he died. I hadn't opened it then. It had felt like salt poured into a wound, like letting him speak from beyond the grave when I wasn't ready to listen. But today, my fingers slid easily under the flap. The paper inside was thin, his handwriting slanted and hurried. It started simply, "Margaret, I know you never wanted to hear from me again, but I need to tell you something." I felt my pulse quicken. My hands trembled slightly. "I've been carrying a secret, and I can't take it to the grave. You deserve the truth. Daniel, he isn't biologically yours. I found out years ago. Emily was already pregnant when we got together. I thought I could pretend he was mine, but he's not. And neither of us ever told you." I stopped reading. The room spun for a moment, then settled back into place. I forced myself to finish the letter, apologies, excuses, regrets, empty words that meant nothing now. Daniel, my Daniel, was the product of another woman's affair. A child left on my doorstep without my knowledge, without my consent. And I had loved him anyway. God help me. I had passed every test I never knew I was taking, every scraped knee, every late night fever, every overtime shift to buy him sneakers and class photos. And still here I was, discarded, replaced, erased. But now I had clarity, a truth sharp enough to cut through the years of silence and betrayal. And I was done bleeding for it. I didn't cry, not even with the letter trembling in my lap, heavier than anything I had ever held before. There was no point. Tears had built Daniel's childhood. Tears had paid for his shoes, his asthma medication, his first car. Tears had filled my pillow after his father left, after every school ceremony where he never once turned to find me in the crowd. I had run out of tears years ago. What I had now wasn't grief. It wasn't heartbreak. It was clarity, and it was powerful. I rose and walked to the kitchen, pouring myself a cup of black coffee, strong and bitter. I sat by the window and watched the neighbor's sprinkler tick, tick, tick across the lawn. It was a normal Sunday morning outside, but inside me everything had changed. I was no longer the woman who funded someone else's fairy tale and got a folding chair behind the punch bowl in return. I was no longer someone who swallowed betrayal and called it loyalty. Not this time. I pulled out my phone and began making the calls, starting with the florist. My voice was calm, composed, polite. I thanked them for their understanding, confirmed again that Sunday's arrangements would no longer be needed. I didn't offer an explanation. I owed none. Next, the band. Same steady tone. Same deliberate omission of reasons. Finally, the bar service. "Hi, this is Margaret Langley." "Yes, that's right. I'm calling to cancel." "The cocktail reception for the post-wedding brunch?" "Yes, cancel it." No, no issues. Just a change of heart. Thank you. Click. 3 calls. 3 cuts. I could have left it there, but I didn't, because I knew what was coming. I turned off my phone. Waited 5 minutes. Turned it back on. 38 unread messages. 3 voicemails. Daniel again, Mom, where are you? The band didn't show. What the hell is going on? Emily's mother. I don't know what's happening, but this is incredibly unprofessional. People are asking questions. Then Emily herself. Margaret, seriously, is this because you were upset about the seating? That's just petty. We had a vision. Don't ruin this. Petty. The word rang in my head, sharp and ugly, like a branding iron pressed to skin. And yet, when I closed my eyes, all I could see was her, Emily, smirking across the reception hall, knowing exactly where I had been placed, knowing exactly what she had done, knowing I wouldn't fight back. Until now. I turned the phone off again. Let them spiral. Let the questions pile up. Let them realize the bar had run dry because I was the well. The music had stopped because I paid the final note. The flowers hadn't arrived because the roots were already rotten. I wiped down the kitchen counters, fed the cat, folded laundry. It was the most peace I'd felt in months. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I didn't answer. Let them knock. Let them sit in the heat of their own discomfort. Later that night, I posted a single photo on Facebook. Not of the wedding. Not of me. Just a picture of the check I had written. The one that covered it all. With the account number blurred out, but the signature clear and undeniable. No caption. No explanation. Just a truth they couldn't erase. A receipt of sacrifice. And then I logged off, not just from Facebook, but from the guilt. The silence, the pretending. I didn't need their explanations. I didn't need their spin, their justifications, their watered-down apologies. Let them sit in the wreckage they built. I wasn't going to save them from it. The silence was the first sign they were scrambling. No more frantic messages. No more defensive calls. Just a strange, stretched-out quiet. The eye of a storm hovering over my life. I could feel it. The tension, the waiting. They didn't know what I would do next. Truthfully, neither did I. But whatever came next would be mine. Monday morning, I brewed coffee and sat by the window. No makeup. No earrings. Just me and the day. Just the hum of the fridge in the background. Daniel hadn't called since Sunday. The last voicemail from him was short, stiff, defensive. You really made a scene, Mom. Everyone's talking. You embarrassed us. I don't know what you were trying to prove, but you crossed a line. I didn't even flinch when I heard it. Because here's the truth no one likes to say aloud. You can give someone everything, your time, your money, your love, and still be disposable. You can build their entire world and still be told you don't fit the aesthetic. The betrayal didn't surprise me anymore. What surprised me was how little I cared now that I'd stopped begging for their approval. That morning, I deleted Daniel's contact from my phone. Not the number, just the name. I didn't need to forget him. I just didn't need his name lighting up my screen like it still belonged there. Around noon, I went out, groceries, post office, small errands. Life continuing. In the bakery aisle of all places, I ran into Diane, my cousin who had flown in for the wedding. She smiled when she saw me, but there was hesitation behind it. Margaret, hey, she said. I nodded. She stepped closer, lowered her voice. Are you okay? I met her gaze. Are you okay? I asked steady. Watching me sit back there? Her face flushed. I didn't realize that was on purpose. I thought maybe you. No, I cut in gently but firmly. You didn't think. That's all. A long, awkward silence stretched between us. I'm sorry, she said finally, voice small. It was wrong. I should have said something. I nodded once. Thank you. She looked relieved, as if that tiny sliver of accountability had freed her. It hadn't freed me, but it was a start. When I got home, I found a bouquet sitting on my porch. Carnations, the cheap kind, already wilting. No card. I didn't bring them inside. Instead, I walked them straight to the trash bin. Later that evening, I poured myself a glass of water, sat back by the window, and watched the sun slip below the horizon. The ending had already written itself. Now it was my turn to begin. That evening, I checked Facebook. The photo of the check had gathered nearly 100 comments. Old friends, colleagues, neighbors, even people I hadn't heard from in years, all weighed in. Some were confused. Some were outraged. But most understood. One comment stuck with me more than the others. "This broke my heart, Margaret. I've never related to something so deeply. Thank you for showing us we don't have to stay quiet." That was it, the beginning of something new. Not revenge, not spite. Power reclaimed. Let them rage in their group chats. Let them craft whatever narrative they needed to suit themselves. I wasn't replying. I wasn't explaining. I was choosing silence, not as surrender, but as control. And this silence? This time it was mine. It started with the drawer. A creaky old thing in the guest room dresser, half stuck, always needing a hip bump to open properly. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. Just clearing out the remnants of a life I'd been too tired to sort through. But somewhere between yellowing tax returns and expired coupons, I found it. The red folder. Again, I thought I had already emptied it out. But tucked deep into the sleeve, so thin it could have passed as part of the lining, was another letter. No envelope this time. Just a sheet of paper, folded once, then again. The same slanted handwriting. The same name staring back at me like a ghost. Michael. My ex-husband. The letter was dated 3 days before he died. "Margaret," it began. "If you're reading this, I guess the first letter reached you. I don't know if you opened it. I hope you did. I won't waste time apologizing again. I need to tell you something more. Something I couldn't carry with me. Something I should have said a long time ago. Daniel wasn't just someone else's son. He was never supposed to be yours at all. When Emily left him at my door, she didn't want to keep him. She was 18, terrified. She asked me to give him up for adoption. I couldn't. I didn't have the heart. I lied to you. I told you he was ours, that he was a mistake from before we got married. You believed me, and you raised him. You loved him like he was flesh of your flesh. But the truth is, he wasn't even that. He was a stranger's child. And you made him your world anyway. I don't know how you'll feel reading this, but I hope, God, I hope, you know that whatever else I did wrong, I was right about one thing, choosing you. You were the only person strong enough to be his mother, not because of blood, because of who you are. I didn't move. The words sat heavy on my chest like a boulder. Not biologically mine, not even accidentally mine. Chosen by a man who abandoned both of us, who handed me a child and disappeared as if he'd done me a favor. For the first time in days, my breath caught. My knees went weak. I sat down on the edge of the bed, the paper trembling in my hands. 1,000 memories flashed before my eyes. The first time I rocked Daniel to sleep, his tiny fist curled against my shoulder. His first word, truck. The fever that scared me so badly I drove barefoot to the ER in the middle of winter. The science fair project he cried over when the volcano wouldn't erupt. His first real heartbreak. His laughter the day he got his college acceptance letter. Every moment I thought was ours. Every piece of my life built around this boy. A boy I chose without even knowing I had. And now I had to accept a truth no mother should ever face. He had never truly seen me. He loved what I gave him. Not who I was. Not really. If he had, he never would have let her banish me to the kitchen. He never would have stayed silent. He never would have let them erase me. I placed the letter gently on the bed and smoothed it flat with my hand. It didn't feel like betrayal anymore. It felt like freedom. For 62 years, I had lived a version of myself that existed only in service to others. Wife, mother, provider, ghost. But now, staring at those faded inked words, I saw something new. Power. Strength I didn't even know I had. Because I had loved completely a child who was never mine to claim. And I never let that stop me. Because I stayed when others ran. Because I chose to be a mother without blood, without obligation, and I chose it every single day. And finally, at long last, I was choosing myself too. Because I had made a family, even when it wasn't written in blood. And I could choose again, starting now. I left the letter open on the kitchen table. Didn't hide it. Didn't lock it away. Just let it sit there, plain visible, a truth I no longer needed to shield from myself. I moved through the house like I was seeing it for the first time. The beige walls, the faded photos of Daniel's high school graduation, the dent in the doorframe from when he crashed his bike trying to ride inside. I used to smile at that dent. Now I just stared at it. This house wasn't a home anymore. It was a museum of sacrifices, a place where every corner whispered the story of how I had erased myself to keep him whole. The faded armchair where I nursed him through fevers. The sewing kit tucked in the hallway closet, used to hem his pants year after year. The pantry shelves still stacked with honey bunches of oats, his favorite cereal, even though I hadn't liked it in years. And then it hit me. I didn't even know what my favorite cereal was anymore. I couldn't remember the last book I read that wasn't a parenting guide or a hospital-mandated professional development. I didn't remember the last time I spent money on something just for myself. I had lived so long being his mother that I had forgotten how to be a woman, a person. I poured myself a glass of water, sat on the couch, and let the silence wrap around me. It didn't feel lonely. It felt honest. My phone buzzed on the side table. Daniel again. A long message this time. The tone was different, softer, almost contrite. I don't know what happened. I've been thinking about everything. Emily said she didn't mean to hurt you. I'm sorry if you felt excluded. If I felt, not because you excluded me, not because you left me behind. Even now, it was still about his perception, his comfort, his distance from blame. I didn't respond. Instead, I picked up the remote and turned on the television. A cooking show hummed in the background, calm and steady. The kind of mindless normalcy I hadn't allowed myself in years. My eyes drifted to the letter again. He wasn't mine, not by biology, not by law. But I had been his entirely until he made it clear I no longer belonged in the family he was building. The ache inside me wasn't for him anymore. It was for the version of myself I had abandoned. The woman who stayed up making every birthday special. The woman who wrapped dollar store Christmas presents in perfect bows. The woman who cooked, cleaned, sacrificed, and never once heard, "You go sit, Mom. I'll handle it." I had been background music, a safety net, a reliable, uncomplaining silence, but no more. That evening, I took down every framed photo of us from the walls, not out of anger, not out of spite, because it was time to stop living in a shrine to a version of motherhood that demanded I disappear. I boxed them up carefully, wrapping the glass in old towels. I labeled the box in black marker, memories, not obligations. Then, for the first time in longer than I could remember, I cooked dinner just for me. A recipe I had seen once on a travel show. Lemon butter pasta with roasted cherry tomatoes and garlic. No chicken nuggets. No side of mac and cheese. Just what I wanted. I lit a candle as I ate. Played soft jazz. Set the table for one. It wasn't lonely. It was something else entirely. It was the sound of reclaiming myself. Later, I pulled out a yellow notepad, no glitter pens, no gold foil invitations, just simple, honest paper. I began to make a list. Not of people I had to invite. Of people I wanted to invite. Claire, my old friend from the ER who used to sneak coffee into my locker when I worked doubles. Mr. Henderson, my next-door neighbor who always snow blew my driveway before I could get to it. Dina, from the bookstore I visit every Sunday, who asks about my week and actually listens. Nurse Janet, who once stayed late on her own birthday just to help me cover a shift no one else would. Not a single one shared my blood, but every one of them had made me feel seen in a way my own son never had. And that was the new theme. Not obligation, not performance, just people who saw me. It wasn't a wedding, wasn't a holiday, just a simple dinner at my house. My food, at my table, no folding chairs, no back kitchens, no invisible woman forgotten behind swinging doors. Just me, and the life I was finally choosing to build. I spent the next few days getting everything ready, not because I had to impress anyone, but because I wanted to. For the first time in years, I wasn't preparing something for someone else's story. It wasn't about Daniel. It wasn't about redemption. It wasn't about proving a thing. It was about making space for something I hadn't allowed myself in a long, long time. Joy. For me, I went to the market and picked out the ingredients myself: fresh basil, garlic, heirloom tomatoes. Not a single frozen appetizer tray in sight. I even bought a new tablecloth, blue with bright sunflowers, the kind of thing I would have loved when I was 20, before all the shit started stacking up around me like bricks. On the morning of the dinner, I woke up early and played music while I cooked. Van Morrison, Stevie Nicks, Norah Jones. The house smelled like garlic, olive oil, and lemon zest, like warmth, like effort, like home. The first guest arrived just before 6. Claire, with a bottle of red wine and a grin so wide it made me smile back without thinking. "You look amazing, Maggie," she said. And I did. My hair, soft gray at the temples, was loose and confident. A simple linen blouse brushed cool against my skin. No Spanx, no mascara tears waiting to happen. Just me. They trickled in after that. 6 guests. Laughter at the door. Hugs that lingered longer than necessary. Wine being poured without anyone asking permission. We ate at the table I once used to fold laundry and help Daniel with math homework. Now it was full of passing plates, clinking forks, and napkins being dabbed to mouths mid-laughter. And I laughed too. Really laughed. Someone told a story about a terrible first date. Someone else confessed they steal a pen from the bank every week out of spite. And somewhere between dessert and second helpings, it hit me. This was family, not assigned by blood, but chosen. Intentionally, authentically. I didn't feel forgotten. I didn't feel managed. I didn't feel small. I felt present. Toward the end of the evening, as we sat under the string lights I had strung across the back porch, Claire raised her glass. "To Margaret," she said, her voice bright, "for being the kind of woman who reminds us that it's never too late to take your seat at the head of your own table." Everyone clinked glasses. I laughed softly, raising my glass back, meaning every word when I said, "To finally being seen." The knock came just after noon the next day. Not loud, not urgent, but steady, like he knew I was home and wasn't going to leave until I opened the door. I stood barefoot in the hallway, watching his silhouette through the frosted glass. Daniel. It had been a week since the wedding. 7 days of silence from me. 7 days of unraveling for him. I opened the door slowly. He looked the same, but not really. The glow was gone. The suit was gone. He wore a wrinkled t-shirt, dark circles shadowing his eyes. His mouth tightened when he saw me, like he had rehearsed 10 different ways to start this conversation and forgot them all at once. "Hi, Mom." I didn't say it back. Instead, I stepped aside, letting him in. He hesitated, then walked past me into the living room. The house was clean, still, sunlight pouring across the floors. On the mantel, the photos were gone. Every last one of him. He noticed immediately. His eyes flicked toward the empty spaces. "Where are the pictures?" I ignored the question. "Sit down," I said, calm flat. He obeyed, sinking into the armchair across from me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't come here to fight." I nodded. "Good. He shook his head. "I don't understand what happened. One minute everything was fine, and the next you're canceling things, posting checks on Facebook?" That stung. Not because he was hurt, but because he still didn't ask how I felt. Because even now, he still wanted an explanation. A clean, comfortable reason to make it make sense for him. I stood, walked to the hallway closet, and pulled out a box. I set it gently on the coffee table between us. "What's this?" he asked. "Receipts," I said simply. "Every one of them from the last 12 months. Venue deposits, dress fittings, caterer down payments. I even covered the extra dance floor you wanted. Remember that?" His eyes scanned the papers, but he didn't touch them. Then I pulled out the next item. A letter. His father's handwriting unmistakable on the page. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. I simply held it out to him. The truth he never knew. The weight he was finally going to have to carry himself. While he read, I watched his face. First came confusion, then recognition, and finally the slow, creeping shadow of disbelief. He looked up at me, his voice cracking. "You knew." "I do now," I said. He swallowed hard. So you're angry because you're not my biological son? I interrupted, shaking my head. No, I'm angry because I raised you, Daniel. I gave you everything I had. And when the moment came for you to honor me, to stand up and say, this woman made me, you sat down. He dropped his gaze, silent. You let them shove me into the kitchen, I continued. My voice didn't shake. You watched them humiliate me, and you said nothing. That's what broke me. Not your DNA, not the money, not the sacrifices. Your silence. He finally spoke, barely above a whisper. I didn't think it would matter. Emily said. She said it would be better for the pictures, for the look. I didn't think you'd be hurt. I laughed, cold and brief. You didn't think. Exactly. I stood, walked over to the mantel, and picked up an empty frame. This, I said, holding it up, used to hold a photo of your kindergarten graduation. You had a missing tooth and marker on your shirt. You ran off the stage, straight into my arms. I turned it over and placed it face down. I'm done holding onto versions of you that no longer exist. He flinched like I had slapped him. Mom. No, I said firmly, cutting him off again. I'm not your backdrop anymore. I'm not your bank. I'm not your afterthought. He stared at the floor, his jaw clenching. He nodded slowly. I'm sorry, he whispered. Too little. Too late. I picked up the box, closed the lid, and handed it to him. These are yours now, I said. Take them. Every receipt, every record, every reminder of what you chose to overlook. He hesitated, but eventually took the box from my hands. I walked him to the door. He paused at the threshold, looking back at me, searching my face, hoping, perhaps, for a crack, a softness, a sign that the door might open again later. But it wouldn't. You always said I was your whole world, he said quietly. You were, I replied. And now I'm finally mine. Then I closed the door. Inside, the house was warm with laughter, real laughter. The kind that fills your chest and makes your eyes crinkle without you even noticing. The kind that echoes through the walls and reminds you that you're still alive. The smell of garlic and rosemary drifted through the air. The table was set with care. A blue and sunflower yellow cloth, mismatched plates, cloth napkins folded neatly into little fans. A single candle flickered in the center, not to impress anyone, but simply because I loved the way the flame made the silverware shine. My guests were gathered in the living room, sipping wine, sharing stories. Mr. Henderson was in the corner, telling a hilarious story about the time he locked himself out of his house in his underwear. Everyone was howling with laughter. Claire had tears streaming down her cheeks from laughing so hard. And me, I was standing in the kitchen, barefoot, holding a glass of wine, smiling, not waiting to be called in, not hidden behind a door, not forgotten. I was the hostess. I was present. I was seen. I plated the last dish, roasted vegetables with thyme and sea salt, and brought it to the table. As I set it down, someone clapped. Chef Margaret strikes again, Claire said with a wide grin. We sat. We passed bowls, poured more wine. And somewhere between second helpings and the last bite of cornbread, Claire raised her glass again. I think we should toast, she said. Everyone nodded eagerly. To what? Dina asked. Claire turned to me. To choosing yourself, she said warmly, and to knowing when to stop giving to people who only know how to take. Everyone raised their glasses. And this time, I raised mine fully without hesitation. I stood. My hands didn't tremble. My voice didn't shake. I looked around the table, at faces that weren't bound to me by blood, but by choice, by love, by respect. To the mothers who stayed quiet for too long, I said, voice steady. To the women who gave everything and were told it was still not enough. To the ones who built the damn house and were asked to sit in the kitchen. This is for us. May we never sit down again, unless it's at the head of our own table. Glasses clinked. Someone cheered. And I sat down, not in the back, not in the shadows, but at my place, at my table. Daniel never called again. I didn't need him to. The people who mattered were already here. The next morning, I woke up to birdsong and sunlight pouring through my window. No regrets. No tightness in my chest. Just peace. I made coffee. wrapped myself in my robe, and sat out on the porch, feeling the breeze tug gently at the fabric. I looked out over my garden, roses blooming wild and bright. I wasn't someone's backdrop anymore. I was the main character in my own life. And finally, that was enough. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters here.